Now, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 50 years old. I never thought I'd be 50 years old. I always sounded so old when I was younger, right? 50 years old. But one thing I'm trying to make sure I never do is say kids these days. And it's hard though, right? Kids these days. They are different than we are, but I really hold to the idea that even though they may be different, they're actually not too different than what we were when we were younger.
Kids these days.
And so the thing I want to say is this: kids these days, I actually believe are in pretty good hands. And so what I want to share with you, there's some stories of my experience with some students that hopefully will give you hope. Because so many times we hear all the negative about our students in this generation, but I really believe that we are in good hands. So I just want to share a few stories with you, and hopefully you can get that same sense of feeling that I have. So last week, out of nowhere, passing period, and from one period to the next period, a student walks in with a cell phone, and he says, "Hey, Mr. Peel, I found this on the ground outside. I just wanted to give it to you so you can turn it in." And he handed me the cell phone. Now you may think, that's it? That's it? That's the end of the story. A real short story. But what amazed me about this is when you hear about all these students and all the bad things that some students do and everything else, there's this one student that just did the right thing. Not for any other gain. He wasn't expecting anything from it. He wasn't expecting anything like that, but he did the right thing. And so when he turned the phone over to me, I said, "Thank you." And I was amazed by that man's character. So that's just one example of what students do good in the class. I also had a student one year, and this blew me away. She was a student she filled my class. She filled my class. She was hardly ever there because she was always out doing something, a counselor or something else. And so I never would say she was anything of a good student. Good person, yeah, but not a good student. And so towards the end of the year, I think it was the last week, her and I had a brief conversation about something, and I remember I asked her, "Is it okay if I give you a hug?" And I did one of the little side hugs that we do, little side hugs, and then she walked out. And then the last day of school, she gave to me this little, it was a penny. And the penny, I think it was like a souvenir penny, and that she got somewhere else. And she gave me a souvenir penny. I said, "Thank you very much." And she goes, "You're welcome." And then she goes on to tell me, she says, "Thank you for the hug you gave me last week." I said, "Oh," I said, "You're welcome." She goes, "Now I know what it feels like to get a hug from a dad. Thank you." And then she walked out. And I remember last day of school, she walked out, I closed the door and I started crying. I said, "Oh my gosh." The fact that she went out of her way to express to me what that hug meant to her, oh man, as teachers, sometimes we forget just the influence we have. And students most forget the influence they have upon us, because I am still talking about that girl today. That meant the world to me. Now, once again, it wasn't her grades, it wasn't anything like that, it was her character. And the fact that she shared that with me, the fact to know that I had an impact on her, no matter how big or small it is, means the world to me. And she had an impact upon me. So that's just another example of how great some of these kids are. Several years ago, I had a student in my class that had Tourette's. And I remember we'd be in the middle of class and I'd be doing notes, and out of nowhere, he would say something or kind of blurt out. And as a teacher, that's pretty hard, right? As a teacher, it's pretty hard. And he would just blurt out certain stuff. And so what amazed me about this man is he never let that hold him back. He had Tourette's, it came out, things set out, but it wasn't like he sat there and silent. It wasn't like he sat there and brooded over it and got frustrated. Nothing like that. He didn't let it hold him back. Even though he had Tourette's, he still was a good student. He still did his work, still showed up on time, and he put all the effort into me. So the fact that someone could be experiencing something like that and still do a job as a student and still be a good person in general was amazing to me, because I cannot tell you the same. If I had something going on with me, I cannot tell you I'd be as good a quality of a person as he was. And so the fact that he was able to experience all that and still turn out to be a great student, is amazing, and kudos to him. On the same note, in the same class with him were all my other students. And this was awesome. We'd be in class, he would have an outburst, and all the students ignored it. They just ignored it. Now, partly because I'm sure they're used to it, but they ignored it. Now, you know how easy it would have been for them to start making fun of him, to start laughing, to do all these other things, but they were respectful enough of him that they didn't do that. And I was like, man, I'm thinking when I was their age, I mean, don't be wrong, I was a decent student, but as far as character goes, I don't think I had it in me. I don't think I had the character that many of these students have. And that entire class did a tremendous job of not only ignoring his outbursts, but also including him in different activities. So I was very pleased with my students in that class. And as far as accepting, just like they accepted him as a student, my students were very accepting of other people, other cultures, and other ethnicities, and other sexual orientation, and you name it. I am amazed at how accepting this generation is. Whether you agree with some of the things going on now, makes no difference. What I want to focus on is just how accepting these students are today, how accepting this generation is today. I see students of all different races getting together, hanging out and talking. I see students of different gender identities getting together, hanging out and talking. And I don't see students putting each other down in that way like they did when I grew up. And so I'm just pleased beyond belief that this generation is so accepting of the people around them. In my class, we have some amazing conversations. I mean, we're talking about stuff that, you would talk about this in college, and here I have these 8th graders. And some of these students, when we dive into it, man, when I was 8th grade, I was just trying to get through the day, just trying to get through the day. Hopefully no one noticed me, or maybe I was interested in a girl, hopefully maybe she noticed me. But these conversations, I didn't even think about this stuff, but yet we're having some of these conversations and they blow me away. And so that's another thing I think is amazing, is some of their thinking is incredible. I'll give you an example. Tomorrow we're taking notes on the 13 colonies, and part of it's the southern colonies where they had slavery. So what I do is I take them through a process. I call my big thinking questions. And so I take them through a process. And here's a question I'm going to have, and usually the conversations that come out of it. And so the question I have is are slave owners good people or bad people? Right? And then they'll write their answer down, then we'll have a class discussion about it and everything else. And usually it'll come up that they're bad people, right? I mean, that makes sense to me that they're bad people. And we kind of agree upon that as a class. I'm kind of leading them a certain way, right? They're bad people. And then I say, all right, perfect. Well, here's the next question. Who decides what's good or bad? And they'll write down their answers. Then we'll have a class discussion, right? Who decides? And eventually what we usually get to is that we decide that, the government kind of decides what's good or bad. The people decide, but the people make up the government. So whatever more people decide is good or bad, and that is what's good or bad. I'm like, all right. So now we got that the government decides what's good or bad. And then I hit them with that last question. I said, well, if a government says that slavery is good, doesn't that make slave owners good people? And right there is when you see a lot of them freeze up, like, they're trying to put it together. And they think about it, they write down a response, but then we have that class discussion. And what the best thing is, at the end of the class discussion, many students will say, oh, my brain's hurting, I don't know what to think anymore, I'm so confused. And I love that. That is exactly what it's all about. Because the fact that they're so confused, the fact that they're thinking about the brain hurt shows me they're actually thinking about that question. And so these conversations, I have them all throughout my year at different points. And I love these conversations. But the fact that these 8th graders are able to have it blows me away. Thank you for watching the video. If you like what you saw, please hit the subscribe button or click on one of the other links.